Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryanta Vande Guru Paramparam Ishvaro Guratmeti Muchi Veda Vivagine Vyomabda Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Savavedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramananda Satiguru Pranatoshmaham Om Shanti 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 Om Namaste. Welcome everyone. So we carry on with the Panchadasi. We are still in the introduction of the text. So the next paragraph of this introduction presents us with the idea of the void or non-existence. So as we have already determined, there is no such a thing as non-existence. We have seen it in the Viveka Shuddhamani as well. Because in order to be sure that there is such a thing as non-existence, someone must be there existing to determine that there is no such a thing as that there is such a thing as non-existence. So when people talk in terms of non-existence, they are either talking about an absurdity, because nobody can really proclaim or determine that without proving one's own existence, or they are referring to a certain state, mental state, which is commonly known as emptiness, nothingness, or the void. So, but as we know, there is no such a thing as the void either, because the void is not really void, because we are experience something there. We experience actually the two things. We experience the light of the illuminator, the consciousness. And if we experience the void in a state of, let's say, Savikalpa Samadhi, we experience the light of the illuminator reflected in a very subtle intellect, which produce the experience of absence of object. So as we know, the void is nothing but an experience of the light of consciousness reflected in the subtle intellect of the yogi or the meditator, experience the absence of duality, meaning to say there are no real objects. But Vedanta comes and says, but in truth, there is duality. Because if we look at that and we say that experientially there is an experience of the void then is an object. And how can we say that the void is an object? The void is not a void, but it's an object, because it's being objectified by the meditator. The meditator say, oh, I'm experiencing now emptiness, nothingness, the void. So anything that is objectified by the subtle intellect is an object, okay? Of course, we can always come back and understand that the intellect itself is an object, okay? So it's an object when we stand in awareness as awareness, and then the intellect is an object. But from the standpoint of the yogi in Savikalpa Samadhi or in Sahaja Samadhi, the yani in Sahaja Samadhi, in natural Samadhi, the mind resolved by knowledge, by self-knowledge. So there is this sense of peace, and the duality is there, objects are there, but it's experienced as no disturbing objects that do not really pull us around or push us, kind of this magnetic pull and push, depending on the objects, whether it is of attraction or aversion, right? So we go through, there is somebody trying to get in here. We go through all this experience, and in Savikalpa Samadhi, we have an experience of absence of tangible objects, but that empty space is the object that we call void. Why? Because the person who is there is not saying, oh, I have experienced nothing. When we go to deep sleep, we say, wow, I remember there was a chunk of my night, a piece of time, a part of my night that I have experienced nothing. So how can we say I have experienced nothing unless nothing was objectified by me during that state, right? Because I can recall it. I can recollect my experience of that object, which is the absence of what I like to call tangible objects. So this to say that non-existence does not really existence, the void exists. And a lot of people have these notions that enlightenment is to fall in a huge void, emptiness. And of course, it is a very scary kind of business because it's, oh my God, my sense of identity is dissolved, my ego is dissolved. One time I had an epiphany like that doing a retreat, long time ago with Gangaji. In those days, I was living in the USA and I was shopping around with the Neo Advaita gurus. And then I had a few retreats with Gangaji. And one of these, I entered in a state like that of samadhi, and I felt that I was disappearing, and I got scared because of these notions, that you're gonna go into the void, and then you're going to be gone, and then your ego, your mind, your identity, everything is going to be dissolved. Huh? So those notions that can be very, very, very scary for a lot of people in the spiritual world, and some people they stay away from enlightenment because they believe that they need to die as an individual, as a person. You understand? No, the person does not go anywhere, as we know. It just becomes a smart or a wise person, a person who understood, I'm not really a person, but I appear as a person and I should behave as a person. But since I have to behave as a person, I rather behave as a wise person because now I have my intellect educated by these Vedic, religious, spiritual scriptures. I understand how to behave down here as a person as well. I mean, we can only behave as a person, of course. Right, Mark? So what happened is that there is no need to be afraid of this void because void is just a deep sleep, and the deep sleep, although the ego and the intellect is not really active, and the mind, but we have a full confidence. Every day in the night, we are going to sleep, hoping that we have as many hours of deep sleep as possible. And we have unconsciously, of course, we have this full confidence that I remain through that experience and I have no fear of disappearing. You understand? I go into that experience, the so-called emptiness or void, and I experience my consciousness, and the absence of tangible objects. Tangible objects are objects that are perceived by the sense instruments in the state, in the state of the in the awakened state, we experience tangible objects which are perceived through our sense instruments. In the night, we perceive tangible objects. Why? Because they have a shape, they have a form, they have a name. They are tangible objects, but they are perceived through the sense organs, which belongs to the mind. The sense organs in the dream is going to, those are all tangible objects. But once we go into the deep sleep, we experience something like emptiness or absence of tangible objects. Okay, does that make sense, David?
I guess, yeah, I'm thinking it makes sense. I'm trying to understand, you know, why this is important, I guess. I mean, so
Well, we are. This is considered one of the most well organized Vedantic texts. It's called like it's called like a Vedanta manual, one of the best Vedanta manual that comprise all the teaching. So we are just going through the introduction. So stay with us and call forth your patience.
Okay.
So let's assume that I am a person who plays various roles in life. So now we have an analogy here. We have an analysis. A role itself is an object. When I play a role of being a husband, I can watch, I can objectify my role as a husband as I do with my role as a son, as I do with as a role as a father. So those roles, they are objects, of course. So when I play one role, you understand, I'm playing different. Apparently, I am a different person. But when we look a little bit more attentively, carefully, we see that I am the same person, just dressed up as a son, as a father, as a husband, and so on. So likewise, so what we are going here is likewise, consciousness is all the time having an experience of tangible object or experience of the void, which is an experience of the absence of object, plus an experience of the fullness of the light of the illuminator. Light of illuminator is a good pointer for consciousness because it's the true source of conscious revealing light. You understand? So we experience those things, and in all different roles, likewise, we have different experience depending on our roles, but the experience consciousness is the same way consciousness is the same through all kind of objects we experience. Objects of experience, every experience is an object of experience, okay? Experience itself, general, let's say experience is an object. So, and it becomes like discrete, specific, experience when we have an experience of, I experience my dog now, I experienced the flower. So those are experiences as well. But as we know, whatsoever role and whatsoever object is before me, one thing never changes, which is consciousness. So consciousness remains through the three states, in the waking, the sleep, and the dream. And through all our roles, through all our activities, through all our relationships, consciousness remains the same. In this text, we're going to go into an analogy or a logic presented by Vidyaranya that says that experience is nothing but consciousness in its relational state or relational status, state. So once consciousness is in contact with an object, consciousness is somehow colored by that object of experience, you understand? And then bang, we have an experience. So we believe that experience is a problem. Vedanta is saying, don't try to become a yogi and remove the world of experience, the world of objects. Understand that consciousness appearing as an experience is just consciousness in a kind of relational status by the power of Maya. So that is for us to understand that everything is but consciousness, whether it is superimposed by whatsoever object or superimposed by the absence of object. But every time is consciousness in association with Maya is a sort of experience, This experience is consciousness in its relational status. So
Arlindo,
those concepts are important. We need to build and hold them because later on it's going to start coming together, the picture. Who said something? Claudio?
Io, hello.
Okay.
Can I say something?
Please.
Can you hear me? Yes. Maybe it's a question for later. I don't know, but it's hard for me to understand what we mean with objects. So I understand that the object is everything that is other than me. This is clear, but we say when we studied the mind, the Manomaya Kosha, we say that the mind creates the objects. So, because I can say I see an apple is an object in my mind realized that this is an object, but at the beginning, before the mind puts together all the sensory inputs, you know, the green of the apple or the light, everything. But the five senses, these sensory inputs, can we consider these objects also? I don't know if I am clear. Sorry for my English, but
Yeah. No. The sense organs, they are not sentient. Okay, they are inert. It's an inert thing. When we look at the chart, Ramsey's chart, the subtle bodies in there, the triangle in the middle, you know, the not triangle, the little, you know, that central part of the chart. There you see the sense organs are at the bottom, just they attached to the pranas. Okay, so the sense organs, they are just inert material. So they receive the stimulus, they receive the input, the stimulus from the five elements, you know, and as they receive it, they just they present it to the mind. The mind is the sentient aspect of the Jivatma. Okay, the mind is a reflector. The sense organ, no. The sense organ is totally. It does not shine with consciousness. It's just a material kind of apparatus. Okay, so you receive. So the sense organs, you are absolutely sure that is an object to you, right? The sense instrument and
no,
the
I'm not sure that is an object.
well, when you hear something, okay, you hear through your physical ear, and then your organ, you know, which is in the mind, which is not in the physical aspect of our constitution, but it's in a subtle aspect. The mind inside there is also an organ that is associated, relate to the ear here. You understand? There are two different things. It may take some time for you to understand the difference between the sense instruments and the sense organs. The sense organs belongs to the mind. The sense instruments belongs to the physical body. Understand? So the mind is very subtle. It pervades the physical body. In truth, the body is totally inert. In truth, the body is the physical body is only alive because the subtle body, the mind, pervades the physical body. You know, it is the subtle body that gives life to the physical body. Okay, so and then when the mind, when the subtle body, you know, pervades the physical body, and then it's going to connect the sense instruments with the sense organs, and then only then you can witness. You understand that sound, for example, that music or whatever. So you know that you have an ear, and you know that there is something within your mind, within your sensual body, that can detect, you know, and consciously detect, because a lot of these things go on, but we are not conscious aware. Can you imagine that there are a lot of sounds hitting us all the time, and we only consciously hear for something that runs through our hearing organs, you know, the organs of hearing, you know. It's different. The instrument is receiving everything, but the mind is just saying, no, I want to hear what I want to hear. Excuse me, huh? I want to hear what I want to hear. And then you will hear. So we know all of that, and we can know whatsoever we perceive, whatsoever we witness, whatsoever we objectify. You understand? It's an object of knowledge, experience, and so on. You understand? Everything is an object. The object can be an object of knowledge, object of experience, an object of sense, you know, and so on. So you know that your hearing, yeah, instrument and the organ in your mind is something that is absolutely indispensable for you to hear music, right? So you know them. You know your instruments and you know your organs of perception, but they don't know you, okay? So you are subtler. You are much better sentient principle, you know? So you are the intellect. So you are the meditator. You know, you are the watcher. You are the observer. Okay. So you are capturing those inputs. So those inputs that comes through the physical instrument and the sense organs as well. You understand? They are seen to you as an object of knowledge, an object of experience. You understand? So those are all objects. So I don't know if you understood correctly your doubt in regards to object. When we say, for example, in the previous paragraph that that a role is an object, a life circumstance is an object. You have doubt about that? Oh, there is something, there is a mess in my job. Now my company and my job, and there is a huge crisis and so on. The whole circumstance is an object to you, right? So, and now you are playing a role as a boss there. So that role you need to examine and re-examine to make sure you know that you are just playing that correctly, properly, no? Appropriately. So all of this is objects because you're aware of them, you see them, you experience them, you know them. They do not know you. Okay, you are the sentient principle. They are inert. Sometimes they are very subtle, but they are energy, inert energy. They cannot be conscious of you. You are conscious of them. You understand? So explain me better. What
Yeah.
is your doubt about the object?
No, you explain me now because my doubt was about if I sorry, I don't know if I can explain, but I try. Uh, because you know when the sensory, you just say there are some times that there is some sound, but you don't hear it because you are
You pay
for
attention to
some
something
reason
else.
you pay attention to something exactly. So this was my question because the sense organs, if they are not captured by the mind, we cannot consider it objects because you don't experience it. So this was my doubts, and it's clear now.
Yeah.
Because there is a moment when the sensory organ, not the organ, the instrument receives the input, and it's very subtle, but there is a moment if the mind capture it or not at the beginning. So
Yeah.
I was in doubt about that. I don't know if I
Okay.
explain my doubt,
Okay.
but I understand that if the mind don't capture the sound, you don't have any
No,
experience.
you
So
did not contact that object. There are millions of objects hitting us every moment,
yeah,
but we don't contact
yeah,
them. It becomes an object of experience or knowledge when we really contact them. We pay attention. We take them
okay,
into our awareness.
okay, it is clear. Thank you.
No time, only one day. So this is another concept that time is just an illusion. Let's say. I mean, time is a very very interesting, intriguing uh, notion because it gives us an impression that it is linear. Okay, so where time comes from? Time comes from the idea of creation. You understand? So when we go back and we say, okay, what is time and where does time begin? And then we say, oh, it began like 500 before Jesus Christ came here. So by now we know that that's not the case because of a science. We know that time goes far behind those 2,500 years that we know. So it goes far for millions, billions of years, who knows? So there is no such a thing as beginning of creation. The creation is not linear, therefore time is not linear. You guys understand that? Creation is not linear, therefore time is not linear. Time, the idea of time comes with the idea of creation. There's no beginning of creation, and the Upanishads presents this very, very nice and clearly. And the terms that creation is cyclical. Okay, it is a cycle, it's circular. Okay, cyclical, it means to say that it's always there. That's why we say in Vedanta that Ishvara is eternal principle, and Jiva is an eternal principle, and Jagata is an eternal principle. It's all the time there. And another way to understand this cyclical time or cyclical creation, you know, is to look into the the very simple example. So what came first, the egg or the chicken? You understand? So what came first? So we may have very, very profound philosophical discussions about that, but the fact is that none of them came first, okay? Because if you look from the standpoint of the chicken came first. If you stand as the egg, you say, no, the egg came first. You understand? But none of the two came first because creation is cyclical. So what came first, the seed or the tree? When we stand by the tree as the tree, we say, no, I came first because I'm the tree. I produce the seeds. And then we stand as the seed, and then I say, but that tree began from me. You understand? So it's cyclical. You understand? The whole universe begins from the seed of the universe, creation, which is the macrocosmic causal body. So the macrocosmic causal body is the seed of the universe. The universe manifests and then it goes unmanifest as the night of Brahman. The day of Brahman and the night of Brahman, it goes on forever. And there is no such a thing as the beginning of creation, because the beginning of creation means the beginning of time. And we cannot really say that there is a beginning of time 5, 7, 10 billion years ago, because that would imply another scale of time within which we determine that 7 billion years ago began time. You understand? So there is no way we can make the time linear. You understand? We cannot measure time unless it is within another measurement of time, scale of time. So time is just an illusion. And in this paragraph, Vidyaranya presents, or this book is based on the commentaries on the unfoldment of Panchadasi by Swami Paramarthananda. And a lot of these passages was Ramji listening. Ramji studied this text very, very attentively. He stayed a long, long time paying attention to this listening, studying with Swami Paramarthananda. And he told us when we went for his first seminar on Panchadas in what's the name of that place? Yeah. Trout Lake, about 6 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 7 years ago, I don't remember. But we went there, and he said, "Oh, you know what? This is Panchadas. It was his first Panchadas." And he said, "Oh, I have to say something to you. I went back to school. I had been studying with Swami Paramarthananda for about a year, and I have been learning a lot, and so on. And you know, I have been following his class as he teaches his people there in Chennai. And he has compiled his beautiful book, this beautiful book. And a lot of these commentaries have, some of them have signatures of Ramji, but a lot of it has the taste of Swami P, as Ramji says in the introduction as well. Okay, so this passage here, it's present this concept that there is only one day. When we talk in terms of time, we say there is no such a thing as time, and there is no such a thing as week, months, and year. There is only one cycle, and this cycle is one day. Why? Because in one day we experience the three states. We go through our awakened state, and then we move into our dream state, and then we travel through our dream state, and then we come out again as the awaker. Okay, so every day we only experience the three states. Isn't it interesting? Those are all ways of looking at our experience. We can break down experience to what? Consciousness experiencing what? The five elements. So no matter howsoever they are configured, it's just consciousness experience the five elements. Now we are saying that it's consciousness experience through the three states. And then all there is the three states is one day. And we have already determined in everything we have studied so far that consciousness travels without traveling through the three states without ever changing. Yeah? It moves, right? Like the frog Upanishads, yeah? Mandukya, it moves from one state to another state. But what is moving? It's moving is the mind. Mind is jumping, but consciousness, the common denominator, is remain, absolute changeless. Okay, nirvikara, without any modification. So there is only one consciousness and appearing through the three states, and every day we do three states. Consciousness remains the same through the whole one day. If 1 week is nothing but 7 days put together, if one life is nothing but 70, 80, 100 years, 200 years put together, all by number of days, which are the three states, and then all we do is three states is all there is to time. We can look at that this way. Every day, I wake, I dream, I sleep. If consciousness is changeless through the day, it's changeless forever. If the experience we have in one day through the three states is the same every day, it means that the experience is the same from the beginning of time. And we know there is no such a thing as the beginning of time. So there is only consciousness experience itself through the three states. Don't tell me that it sounds boring, David, please. If experience is the same every day, time is not linear and it's cyclical. Objects change and the experience of objects similarly change. So the objects change. The object can be of the awake state, can be of the dream state, and the awake of the dream state and the deep sleep state. So the objects are going to change. In the awake state, the objects will change. No, they are all the five elements, but they keep changing in the awake state. No? But none of that is real. There is one thing that it's not changed, which is the light of the illuminator, the conscious principle present in any experience through the three states. Yeah? So all these experiences are nothing but consciousness in its relational status, okay? It's relational names of consciousness. So we're going to see it as we go along with this text later on. You do not become a different conscious being when you have a different experience. We don't. We know that. We know that the mind may change through experience. And why does the mind change through experience? If the mind would not be moved by vasanas, by desires and aversions for objects, investments on this or that object, the mind is invested in certain objects, and if it was not for that investment, the mind would remain unaffected through all objects. That is the state of equanimity. That some say the mind is just dispassionate, is equanimous, sees all objects as consciousness in its associate relational state or status. You understand? So we do not become a different conscious being. When we stand in consciousness as consciousness, we have the opportunity to experience this fact. You understand? I do not change. I am that which does not change to experience. The experience is just a relational status or relational. It's myself in a state of relationship with objects due to the power of Maya. Okay? So experience may change, but I do not change. And experience do not really change. What changes is just the reaction of the mind. The reaction of the mind, according to my likes and dislikes, is going to make it feel that experience are changing. It's just my vasanas producing those reactions, reactions of attraction and repulsion to different kinds of objects that are present to me. So, you understand that, Claudio? Hmm? People often ask, how are you today? On those days, I tell you, Ramji was a very, very difficult person. I was staying there in Tiruvannamalai, and Mark was there. I met Mark, I think, that year there, if I'm not wrong. Uh, and I ended up living next door to Ramji. Ramji was living in another house. The house had some problem with water supply, and then I invite him. I somehow I seduced him to move to the apartment next to mine. I was there with Sylvia, and he was there, and he was in this kind of mood. You ask him. First time I was more close to him, and I would say, "Hey, Luigi, how are you today?" And he would look at me and say, "Don't ask me stupid question. I'm always good. I am consciousness. You don't ask me how are you today. You understand? Because I'm always whole, full, and complete. You know. So people routinely ask, "How are you?" This shows that they believe that the self is different from one day to another. Right? And if I'm the self, what I'm gonna tell the person? I have a friend here who keeps complaining about his body and mind as well, a little bit of depression. Da, 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 da. And I never ask him, "How are you?" I never ask him, "How are you?" I don't want to give him this misleading piece of information. I always ask him, "How is the body mind? How is the body mind? How is the body mind?" He stopped complaining about how he feels. I think he does not like my questioning, my question about how is the body mind. This shows that they believe that the self is the body mind, therefore it's different every day. But the same I that experienced yesterday experienced today. The same eye sees the smells, the touch, and ears, and so on. If you have a father experience and subtract the fatherhood from your experience, the aspect I am the father, no? And then what is there? We can call it pure experience, but it would be more correct. There will be no experience at all, because we always experience through a role, through a vasana, and that's what determines an experience. If we subtract our role or our investment in the experience, and then there is not really experience. Oh, there is an experience of equanimity, of total dispassion. It's just a beautiful experience of seeing everything as the same Ishvara, the same God, projecting all these name, colors, and form. This is a spiritual experience, let's say, but it's not the experience of I myself in relationship to someone through certain roles, or I in relationship to certain objects, in relationship to my likes and dislikes. These aspects is what somehow makes up a real human experience. But there are some other levels of spiritual or divine experience when you come and you start to experience everything is God, everything is Ishvara, and that is a very nice experience. Which could also be said an experience of love. If your father enters the room, you have a son experience. So your son experience and you have pure experience, let's say. When your wife comes, experience does not change, the I change. So pain and suffering, let's see what is this paragraph here. Experience is neither pleasurable nor painful. How about that? So experience, in truth, is not pleasurable nor painful. So what makes the experience pleasurable or painful? Well, desires and aversions. Desires and aversions. Desires and aversions are going to project value to the object and are going to make us enjoy it when we get what we want and suffer when we get what we don't want. Understand? So we're going to experience pleasure and pain because our vasanas are going to project, positive values and negative values to objects. And then we're going to have this experience of pleasure and pain. Huh? The seeming pleasure and pain we experience caused by the mind interpretation of discrete experience present to consciousness. Its interpretation is based on vasanas, of past experience. What a vasana is? A vasana is a memory, it's a subtle memory which is filed in our unconscious mind, which says, oh, I have had this experience 1, 2, 3 times and I really like it. Okay, and then it becomes, properly filed there, and then every time the experience comes we start getting really excited. Wow, 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 I know it, I have been there, I have experienced, and I did like it. Sometimes these subtle memories, mental impressions, mental emotional impressions in the causal body, they are so profound that the object does not need to appear before the mind for the mind start, wow, craving it. The mind crave it regardless of the presence or the absence of the object. That's where a vasana becomes an addiction. You understand? The need for something. Then the mind projects it, and I want it, I want it, I want it. Understand? So this is what we call binding vasana. So all these interpretations of objects, whether they are good object, favorable or unfavorable object, is produced by the mind, the intellect, is the ego, is interpreting it based on my past filed experience. Okay, so it's all filed there. And I know sometimes we see people who had traumatic experience in the past, and then they come in contact with anything which resembles, sometimes far away from that experience, and the person immediately is already panicking, afraid that kind of experience is coming close. You understand? And a lot of projects can be made due to this profound binding traumatic vasana, the subtle mental emotional memory based on some very, very painful experience of the past. So it can be projected as a defense system trying to anticipate any possibility of something like that coming close to me. Okay? So when we have a negative based vasana, we can easily project it and say, no, I don't want to even come close to anything similar to that experience. That can become a big problem, as we know. We see that in psychotherapy and the relationships when people project so much. So another introduction here before we enter in the text. It is what is consciousness. So it's important that we define what's consciousness. Is the inner it is the inner immortal essence of every individual. Consciousness is the inner immortal essence of everything in the universe. Everything comes out of consciousness, is made out of consciousness. How so? By consciousness being converted in pure sattva. Sattva is the knowledge experience that makes up everything. It's the intelligent cause of the universe, of everything. So everything is comprised in the mind of God, which is pure sattva. So consciousness is the essence of everything. It is the cause of everything, and it is the intelligence of everything. It's the what gives existence and life to everything. It's the inner immortal. Immortal means to say eternal, beginningless essence of everyone, everything. It's called the Jivatma in this context. In this context, it's called the Jivatma. Is the eternal, all-pervading consciousness awareness. Okay, so this is right away. There is a strong statement here. It's saying that consciousness is the Jiva Atma to begin with. Okay, it's saying here the Paramatma is the Jiva Atma to begin with. In this context of this Panchadasi text, this consciousness is called the Jiva Atma. So I have been pointing out that the Jiva Atma is called Jiva Atma rather than Jiva, because it's the Jiva self. Atma itself is the Jiva self. You understand? So the jiva, it's if we see the jiva from the standpoint of its constitution, configuration of the elements and the three energies and so on, it's just energy matter slash matter. But the jiva in truth is jiva atma, is the jiva self, is the self appearing as the jiva, is the self reflect to become the agent, the experience knowing entity, which in truth is the Atma, is the Atma of Paramatma, the Jiva. That's why self-knowledge is possible, because the Jiva Atma, it shares, the same self as Paramatma. Jiva Atma equal Paramatma. It's called the Jivatma, the beginningless, all-pervading consciousness, because it is its essence of everything. It's called the self. Oh, there comes the self. It's called the self. That without which a thing is not a thing. The nature of something, the nature of everything is that without which the universe cannot exist. Nothing can stand and exist without the self, without consciousness. And the jiva is moved by the same atma of all things. You understand? And the jiva is the only object in the creation, David, that has the potential to recognize that name and form is the eternal, beginningless, all-pervading self. It's only in the intellect of the human jiva this possibility exists. That's why the human birth is considered to be a divine, a very higher, meritorious kind of birth, because it gives us this potential. But as we know, a jiva can fall as well even from being a jiva and become a cockroach in the next incarnation, depending on how one behaves. Without consciousness, you do not exist. Nothing exists. Now we're going to go into a definition of consciousness. So we know when we try to talk about satya, it's very, very simple. Usually the only thing we can say that, oh, you want to know about the self, satya? It's Satchitananda. That's what we can say at the most. Okay? So what's the self? Is existence, is the isness, is the existence. Everything exists, and there is only one existence, and this existence is the self, Satya. So, okay, it's existence. It's the existence of everything. And it is the consciousness that we see animating other creatures, and even shining as the mind in all kinds of living creatures. It's a cockroach has a mind as well. It responds to the environment around it. It is properly intelligently programmed to respond for the sake of preservation and procreation of the species. So we have all these intelligent objects. So we say that consciousness is Sat Chit, consciousness, it shines. Self is Sat Chit and Ananta, which is a little bit more difficult for most people to understand, because it's relatively simple to understand that I experience my existence right now. Right, Karen? Okay, you cannot deny your existence. You cannot deny your existence when you go to sleep, and you are not afraid to lose your existence when you go to deep sleep in the night. Are you afraid? Oh my God, I'm afraid, because if I lose my existence overnight, no, we are not. We know that through the three states, our existence remains. And life is nothing but the three states repeating itself day after every 24 hours or so, right? So I have no problem. I know that I exist and I experience my existence 24/7. Beginninglessly, I experience my existence. And my consciousness, okay, so I am conscious, yes. Oh, but I lose my consciousness when I go in deep sleep. And then Vedanta come here. You say, let's analyze your experience. Let's see if you really lose your consciousness. Let's make sure that, that there is someone there having an experience of deep sleep. Or there isn't, you know. And then once we follow the logic presented by Vedanta, we have to admit, no, there was an experience through the deep sleep. Why there was an experience? I was experiencing, myself, I was still conscious and I was experiencing myself. Of course, I was using a different body. We have three bodies with reference to the three states. In the awake states, we use the physical body, the visual body. And then when we go into the dream, we use another body, which is a subtle body, which is called the Taijasa. When we go into deep sleep, we use another body, which is even more subtle, which is called the Pranya body. Okay, so I use a different body, but there is the same jiva. They're having experience of what? Of the void or the absence of tangible objects. So I'm experiencing the absence of objects here. That's fun. So how do I know that I was consciously there experiencing the void or the absence? How do I know that, Karen? We know that because we love it. And we only love something that we really, really experience and enjoy. We never enjoy, appreciate, and love something unless we have experienced and we have say, wow, thumbs up here because this was really cool, right? So there is I am conscious through the three states. I'm conscious through the deep sleep as well. So we have no doubt that we are conscious and that we exist and we experience our consciousness, our existence 24/7 for how many years our Prabhupada Karma allows us, you understand? So now the only problem is how about my limitless nature as Ananda? No? That takes a little bit more work to understand because this Ananta cannot be real experience as Ananta, although it can be experienced as Ananda, which is a sense of peace, a sense of security, confidence that I don't change to experience. You understand? So it can be experienced, but most important, it has to be really understood my nature as Ananta as well. And that usually takes a little more work. That's why Ramji makes fun and say, okay, so you all choose third enlightened. So now we're gonna do a seminar to see if you get the last third enlightenment, and then you get a full certificate of enlightenment. So when we talk about consciousness, we say, okay, Sat Chitananda, and you take your time to accept that you are limitless. You are not only consciousness and existence, but you are limitless. Take your time, go slow or fast as you wish, okay? But there are other ways to explain what consciousness is. But the problem is we can never say consciousness is this and this and this and this and this. Oh, you see, look at this color here. This is consciousness. We cannot say because consciousness is attributeless. It's free. It does not have anything that could be an inclusion to itself. It does not have any modification within itself. It does not have any quality. The three energies they appear after Maya comes into play. Okay, in Mitya, consciousness itself is free of this most subtle energy called Sattva. I mean, it's free of Maya to begin with. Maya is the most subtle Prakriti, it's this principle in which the three gunas, arise. So consciousness has no property, no qualities, no attributes. The scriptures say that it's without any attribute. That's what we are. And that's why we are what? We feel this sense of completion, fullness, wholeness. Why? There is nothing other than myself. There are no even attribute. There is no even modification within myself as consciousness. You understand? That's where our Ananta comes from. It's one without a second, one without any inclusion. Okay, there are not even the sattvas there. I'm just free of even sattva guna. You understand? I'm beyond Maya. I'm beyond Ishvara. All of that is just a trick of Maya. No? So how are we going to talk about consciousness if consciousness has no attributes, no qualities, no properties, yeah? No characteristics, no talents, no ability to do anything, There is nothing. So, and then the only way we can talk about consciousness is to say it's Sat Chitananda. Oh, but then Sat Chitananda is a sort of attributes of God. No, no. Sat Chitananda is the very nature of ourselves. It's our nature. Our nature is existence consciousness, which is limitless, by the way. You understand? So those aspects, the features of consciousness that are not features, they are the nature of consciousness. But now we're going to look into the definition of consciousness, which is only possible by negation. And that is called features of consciousness. Consciousness has several features, several aspects of itself that can be described only negatively. Okay? And the first one says that consciousness is not part, product, or property of matter. We know that the universe is held together by these two principles. One is the spirit or consciousness, and the other is energy / matter. Okay, so energy, matter, and the spirit, consciousness. So it says that consciousness or the spirit is not a part, and it's not a property or a byproduct of matter. It's not a part, property, or product of the physical body. Looking into the context of the Jiva Atma. What is the Atma of the Jiva? The Atma of the Jiva is not part, it's not product, or it's not a quality or property of the physical body. No, it's not. So, wow, what is this consciousness? It's not, it has no association with the body. It's not PPP, it's not part, product, or property of this physical body. Okay? And then it says, consciousness is an independent entity. It's an independent principle. You know what the independent principle is? Is something that has no association with the physical body. It's totally free and independent of matter. So the best way to understand consciousness in this context is to understand the analogy of the light. So the light is going to illumine and reveal my hand, okay? So is this light a product, a byproduct, or a part or a property of my hand? No. This light is an independent principle, right? This light is illuminating and revealing my hand is an independent principle, okay? Independent principle which pervades, permeates, and illumines the body, illumines the hand here, the light. So consciousness is independent principle or entity, as we wish, okay, which pervades, permeates the body, enlivening the body, making it, follow its guna's nature. It's the one that vivifies because it pervades the body, and then it's also gives us the opportunity to look into this pervasiveness of consciousness that enlivens the body. So consciousness enlivens the body indirectly. It's important to understand that. Consciousness enlivens the subtle body, and the subtle body is going to enliven the physical body. That's how it works. Okay, that's why we can see that the dead body is still being pervaded by consciousness, and consciousness in association with the dead body. What is a dead body? Is a dead body no longer associated with the subtle body? The subtle body is pervading and enlivening the body. The subtle body, the part consciousness, is all pervading. It remains pervading the physical body. And what does it do to the body? It somehow concedes the body the how you call the decomposition process in which the elements goes back to its source. You understand? So the consciousness is going to be there because consciousness is all pervasive. It pervades, and the consciousness, I often say, consciousness has such a vasana for subtle bodies. Every time consciousness comes in contact with the subtle body, it shines with sentience. You understand? And then it leaves it, and then it attaches it to physical forms, and then it animates its physical forms. You understand? So it's an independent principle, it's an independent entity, factor, which pervades and enlivens the body. Consciousness is not limited. We are talking about the Jiva Atma, the consciousness of the Jiva, the reflected consciousness, as we're going to see more and more into this text. The notion of original consciousness and reflected consciousness. It's not limited by the boundaries of the body. So we think like, okay, consciousness now is working because I know I'm alive, I am thinking, I'm existing, my body and my temperature and my heart is beating and my pressure is good. So consciousness is within my body. Ah, okay. So I'm really concerned that it does not poof, it goes out of my body, because if it goes a little bit too far out of my body, oh, come back here. Oh, no, you are my consciousness, No, consciousness pervades the body, but consciousness is not limited by the body. Consciousness pervades everything. Oh my God, I was so attached to consciousness. I thought it was my consciousness. No, it's all over. It's the most ordinary thing, like Ranji likes to put. Ranji has to roll like that notion, that concept, that concept of consciousness is the most ordinary thing because it pervades everything. You understand? So it's not limited by the boundaries of the body. It extends itself beyond infinitely to all directions. You understand? It's all over. It's the only thing in the play. It's pervading the entire universe, all universe, and in the absence of the universe, which some Upanishad says, the universe is nothing compared to our physical body. It's not even like a little thing that is growing our nose. It's just nothing. This universe. And consciousness is pervading this universe. Our universe is nothing pervading. Everything far beyond all universe. Okay, this is the pervasiveness feature or aspect of consciousness. It does not stop at the boundaries of the physical body. The jiva can never say it's my consciousness. Okay, if anything, consciousness can say, oh my God, another body here I have to pervade. But it's the nature of consciousness to pervade. So it does not do anything because consciousness is a karta. It does not do anything, but nothing exists without its pervasiveness. So the next thing that we say is that consciousness is not limited by the boundaries of the body. And when the body that is enlivened by consciousness, when the body dies, as we know, that it dies because the subtle body say, hey, body, goodbye, I'm just working very hard to move you around. And, it's time for me to find a fresh body again. So the subtle body just go, okay? And then the physical body is there. So the consciousness survives the death, the decomposition of the physical body, okay? Once the body medium is gone, consciousness remains, but no longer identifiable. Okay? So this is a very interesting point. It survives the body, the death of the body, and we easily can understand that consciousness remains. And how it remains? Consciousness lost the body. Man lost the body. Consciousness has infinite numbers of bodies to enliven, you understand? to pervade and make it alive and have the gunas animated. Consciousness is not losing anything. So it's free and independent. It survives the death. It's not even a question of survival, because survival gives an idea that consciousness was born into the body and now it survives the death of the body. No, the body was born within consciousness and the body goes, and consciousness does not care for that, because the nature of consciousness is to pervade and give life to everything. Everything that has a subtle body, consciousness gives life and makes it a living creature in the universe. Okay? So it survives. But once this medium is gone, consciousness can no longer be identifiable. What does that mean? It means that when the body is dying, you know, we say, oh no, but consciousness is no longer here. Like I said before, consciousness is no longer here. Push. I saw the consciousness was all pervasive. Now the body is dying here. No, consciousness is there, but because the subtle body left the physical body, consciousness is no longer identifiable there. You understand? The same way we have electricity running through all the walls in our home, but we can only identify electricity when we turn on a bulb, a lamp, you know? And then we say, oh, yes, there is power. Yeah, there is light. Okay, the power is on, okay? Otherwise, we cannot see it. So consciousness is going to shine all these light bulbs. The jivas are just light bulbs. When we say that consciousness shines in the subtle body, making the object, which fundamentally is inert, making it a living creature, you know, it's like we are really light bulbs. You understand? Consciousness shines within us, and then immediately we become sentient, animate creatures moving around, try to understand what life is all about. So we cannot identify consciousness. And consciousness, of course, is beginningless. It's not limited by time. You see, we could go with several other features of consciousness, but no matter how many features we may list, they can all be presented negatively. Okay, there is a nice, beautiful feature of consciousness. I will remember to find it for our next class. I think it was made by Swami Paramarthananda as well, that present consciousness very, very beautifully as well on different in a different language. You know, it's more on those lines that the essential nature of everything. You know, and it keeps saying like in a poetic way, but very, very logical as well. I will find that. I have in one of my files. Okay, consciousness is also said to be Satchitananda, its existence, the isness, and its all pervasiveness, or fullness, consciousness, existence, Ananta. So it's consciousness, its existence, and consciousness existence, which are two sides of the same coin, so as to say. This consciousness is of the nature of limitlessness. And that is a very simple thing. We should never think that, oh my God, and then I should become big. I should have an expansion of consciousness so that I can experience my Ananta. No, consciousness is Ananta because it's the only thing there is. Our nature is the only reality. Okay? All there is consciousness. And I am that, this famous mantra that we find in the Neo-Advaita teachers, you know, all there is consciousness and I am consciousness. So if there is only consciousness, so consciousness is of the nature of one without a second, because all there is consciousness. Oh, but that's not much fun, because, you know, no wonder Maya came into play and started creating duality and plurality, because I don't want to live as consciousness. I can see that David is not very happy about that. Just imagine, oh, there is nothing, nobody else to play with. All there is consciousness. I am consciousness, you know. Don't worry, Maya comes and Maya just projects, you know, all these jivas so that we can enjoy the play of experience, through this diversity of names and forms. And happiness or wisdom is to play the game of duality and diversity, knowing that the essential nature of everything is one and the same consciousness. Therefore, there's nothing to be concerned, not to be worried. Everything is just me consciousness, you understand? So that's what rests, what pacifies positively the mind without trying to having to control the mind by the means of, willpower or yoga. Through an analysis of experience, the verse 3 to 10 established the nature of the individual self as Satchitananda. Through Vedanta, we know the nature of the universal self, Paramatma. It's believed to be different from individual self. Through the Vedanta, we know the nature of the universal self, Paramatma. It's believed to be different from the individual. It is believed to be different from the individual self. We need Vedanta to establish the connection between the individual and the total, because our experience of duality causes us to believe that we are separate from Paramatma. So it's saying here that the general concepts, if we take our conscious existence to be the body, and then immediately we experience duality, immediately we feel like we are limited by the configuration of my body, mind. So it's through Vedanta we can establish our identity as the universal self. But generally speaking, it's believed to be different. Paramatma is believed to be different from the individual self. We need Vedanta to establish the connection between the individual and Paramatma, Jivatma and Paramatma. And this connection is not established by joining Jivatma with Paramatma, but this connection is established by the removal of the notion that there is any difference or separation between Jivatma and Paramatma. It's by this understanding that we can establish the connection, which is not a connection. Connection includes doing something to join something else to, we need Vedanta to establish the connection between the individual and the total, because our experience of duality causes us to believe that we are separate from everything. Okay.
Arlindo?
Yep.
I had a question, if you have a moment.
Okay.
Karen here. I'm sorry, but I have some work going on at the house today, and they just came in. Well, I missed a little bit, but the statement just back a little bit. Space is a substance, not a vacuum, as consciousness. I wondered if you could clarify on that.
Well, I mean, most probably.
I mean, the vacuum is kind of an odd concept for me to think of consciousness sucking everything in. I don't know. I guess that just means it's all pervasive.
What is the passage that you were mentioning about the space? It's in the beginning.
No, just back a little bit up for in the middle of the paragraph right there. Just where it says, let's see, just above consciousness.
It's space like a space. It is consciousness. It's not bound by the body. It pervades everything infinitely. Okay, and the nature of consciousness is what we call is the most subtle of the subtle. Therefore, is the most pervasive principle in the universe. Okay, and it is Satya. Universe is Mithya. Mithya is superimposed on Satya, and of course, it's the substratum of the universe is Satya. It's conscious existence. You understand? So this consciousness pervades the universe. In the same way, space pervades the universe. What is the difference? Is the difference that Maya pervades the space, because Maya is subtler than space. okay? Consciousness pervades Maya and pervades the space and pervades everything that comes out of space. You understand? So space is the most pervasive principle within Maya, the projection of the universe, within the universe. But there are some subtler principles that pervade space. For example, Sattva Guna, Sattva pervades space, okay? So in fact, Sattva is the intelligence that is going to make up space, mixing up the three qualities, and bringing about the first subtle element of creation, which is space. But after space, from space down, space is the most pervasive, okay? And then when space brings about air, air is going to pervade the other elements, but air is not going to pervade space. Space is the most pervasive. And then we have water, and then water again is going to pervade other elements, but it's not going to pervade space and air and space. You see, everything here is subtler, becoming more and more densified or grossified until we have the physical elements, okay? And the elements can be subtler and more dense. The earth is the most dense element, but it contains space, air, water, fire, okay, to become earth, okay? So space is the most pervasive within the universe, but consciousness is the most pervasive there is. And here, if you say like it's space-like, space is a substance. So space is Maya, is meteor, is energy, is matter. Space is matter. Consciousness is spirit. Consciousness is from another different order of reality. It's Satya. It's just free from any qualification or property or anything. You understand? Is that free from any attributes, free from any potential to do anything, but yet nothing exists without this conscious existence. And that's our nature. So this is the most subtle, the most pervasive. The space is also very pervasive. That's why space is an excellent analogy for consciousness. We use the most important analogies to describe consciousness is the space due to its pervasiveness. Are you following, Karen?
Mhm.
And the other beautiful analogy to explain consciousness is the light, because consciousness illumines and reveals, okay? So consciousness illumines the world by revealing the world. And of course, it does so through the intellect of all jivas. It shines in the jivas, and then the world appears in the mind of the jiva, and the jiva can illumine its own environment, you understand, and transact with the environment. So there is this analogy, these two analogies, and here it's saying that the space is invisible, consciousness is invisible, space is pervasive, consciousness is the most pervasive. Space is matter, is a substance. Consciousness is not a substance. Here, it's presenting space is substance, not a vacuum as consciousness. So consciousness cannot even be related to as a vacuum, A vacuum is a phenomenon within Nietzsche as well, but it's just as a matter of speak, Consciousness is not energy, it's not matter. It has
Yeah.
there's no substance. Okay.
I guess that term was confusing me a little bit, but I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, that's why I jumped it. I did not want to bring about confusion. Okay. The objects of sense knowledge, the sound, sight, taste, touch, and smell that are perceived in the awake state have different properties, but the consciousness awareness of these properties, these different properties, the properties of sound, sight, taste, touch, and smell, the consciousness is one, okay? Is propertyless, attributeless, it pervades everything, and it reveals everything, okay? And it is not colored by the gunas, therefore it's free of any any quality. Its objects are perceived in the waking state. They have these different properties, but the consciousness we are is one and have no properties. That is the bottom line here. In the dream state, the perceived objects are transient. In the awakened state, they seem permanent. So it's just a question of density. Okay, the whole thing, everything below the line of Maya is energy, but energy can become a little bit more dense to grossify, to appear to our sense organs as matter, physical, material, tangible matter. Okay, so everything is energy. In the dream state, the objects, they are very subtle because they are impressions in our mind. Okay, it's our mind. It collects all this memory impression, this mental emotional impression. It's deposits, as vasanas. Okay, the objects are already there in our causal body. In the dream state, those objects are projected by the vasanas, and they are perceived as very, very transient objects. Why? Because it is the subtle world of thought slash object. But the objects in that realm of experience, the objects are made out of non-grossified thought. You understand? And then they just flash with the thought. We think, boom, it appears. Okay, there is no density of energy, and the field of experience in this dream state is not structured in a way that time can go relatively slow. We go slow perceiving the objects, and then there is a sense of time between one object of experience and the other. There is a sense of time between the distance between something that I see and I would like to reach, or something, or a sense of time due to a sense of duration of one object. We know when we do experience certain objects, if it's very pleasurable, what happens to them? Time flies. But when it's a very, very difficult experience, the time seems to drag itself. It seems like, oh my God, it seems like an eternity. So I'm having this toothache here, and it's 3 minutes have passed and it seems like 3 hours, right? So this is the nature of the objects in the dream states as opposed to the awake state. The awake state, energy is much more dense, and everything grossifies. Every object in its thought state, the knowledge state, it becomes grossified as a physical object, and they seem to be more permanent, lingering a little long. So those are the different ways we perceive these two realms of objects in the dream and the awakened state, but the consciousness, our true nature, that knows both the dream and the awake is the same, and we know that. We'll wake up and say, okay, now the channel has changed, and I left the dream world where I was there watching and perceiving things, and now I moved to the awakened state, and again I'm back. I was enjoying a nice, a beach somewhere there with a nice sun and beautiful people and so on. And then I wake up and I'm in my bedroom in the winter of Carbondale. So, but my consciousness is the same, right? My consciousness is just there, seeing the change, the different move, a different change. Okay, now things pass, things move very slow. Oh my God, this awakening state is quite something. Huh? It lasts for at least 16 or 17 hours. So I have to go through this dense, structured matter, platform of experience where things moves very slow. Now I met a lot of people who are into this notion that I want to move into this higher dimension in which I can manifest things immediately, like in the dream state. I just go there and then I think and then I experience. I think and experience. I think and experience. And here, I think something, I desire something, sometimes takes a lifetime and I cannot get what I want, So, but that's the nature of this physical material structure, and that's where we can really process our desires and fears of vasanas and learn and grow spiritually, because in the dream state there is very little room for growth. Things, they fly very fast. Our intellectual faculty is a little bit, you know, a little bit precarious, a little bit rudimental, and we can't discriminate very much. Sometimes we see the jiva, their objective. Sometimes we believe that we are there running from this or that in the dream, some dangers, or having a good time with some pleasurable object. So it's a little bit confused. There is very little room for discriminating. But one time I had a very interesting experience, my early days with Ramji, and I shared with him in a satsang in Portland. And I told him, Ramji, listen to this one. I was dreaming and then there was a dream going on, and somehow I was doing so much self-inquiry. When I went into the dream, I started becoming the dreamer, and then within the dream I started saying, oh my God, I'm not gonna buy into this. This is a dream. I'm so sure that is a dream. It's not real. And then when I saw, I came out of the dream having those discriminations. This is the dream state. This is not true. So sometimes this viveka may somehow flows into the dream state, and we may be able to do some sort of discrimination there between reality and no reality. But the big challenge is in the dream state to know, say, oh, this too is a dream. It's not like I came from the dream to say that this awakening state is a dream. No, I'm doing my vivek in the dream state, and this is a dream. And then you go into deep sleep and you hold your discrimination power and you say, this too is a dream. That's very cool. So this is the nature of the awakening and the sleeping states. They are structured differently, okay? But the consciousness awareness is the same. The dream state helps us to understand the unchanging nature of consciousness. The awakened state also helps us to understand the unchanging nature of consciousness, but we have to examine our experience with the help of the scriptures, of course. Otherwise, it's very counterintuitive. So nobody thinks like, oh, I don't change. Like Ranji likes to play like, oh my God, there is so much change in here. Nah? You know that joke of Ramji? I'm going to call my friend David and say, David, how are you there? Are you changing a lot? There is so much change over here. So this is the nature of most samsaris. They think that they are changing. Nah? So the dream state gives us the opportunity to understand our unchanging nature. And in the awakened state, we can also, with the help of the scripture, to understand our unchanging nature. There is no actual difference between the dreaming and awakened experience, except the duration of objects that are present to consciousness is different. Consciousness is uniform and continuous in both states. That's the main thing. Consciousness is the same. That's what is clearly determined through the Upanishads, the Mandukya Upanishad, that the states are changed because the jiva is using a different medium of experience, a different body, and then the mind is going to perceive things differently as a visual, as a taijasa, and as a pranya jiva. But the experience, the consciousness remains the same. Just like the witnessing conscious subject principle, non-experienced subject principle remains the same. Objects are located in consciousness, nowhere else. The idea that consciousness may be located in the body or in the brain is just unfortunate because it misleads all scientists, the entire scientific community, to search for consciousness in matter. So all consciousness, all objects are within consciousness, not the other way around. This should be easy to understand upon analysis of the dream state. The dream state, the physical body appears in the dream as a dream object. It's thought to be real, just as it is in the waking states. Okay? Dream objects are thoughts, therefore the dream body is a thought too. How can it be real? It's also just a thought in the awakened state, but it seems real due to this more dense structure that deceives us through our sense. Okay, it's relatively easy to understand how unreal the objects are if we look carefully to our dream state. Okay, thought it's thought to be real, but just it is in the way to dream objects, thoughts, etc. This should be easy to understand upon analysis of the dream state. Objects are located in consciousness. Why? What it means to say it's easy to understand it in the dream state? Because in the dream states, it's more easy for us to understand that the mind is producing the objects, because the dream is projected by the vasanas, the mind, the causal, the subconscious mind. It projects. So the whole dream world is contained in the mind. So it's not out there. Therefore, in the dream state, it's more easily for us to discard the dream state. Oh, it's not real. It's just a dream. Why? Because I know that I produce that. If I produce that, cannot be real. Because, I'm not God. God produced this universe, and this universe is real. So in the dream state, it's a little bit more easy, because we know that everything is happening within my mind. Therefore, it cannot be real. But in the waking state, the same thing, It's just that the waking state, the world, the physical material world is a projection of Maya Ishvara, whereas the dream world is a projection of Maya Ishvara, but it's a recycled projection of Maya Ishvara because what? I utilize the projection of Maya Ishvara during the awakened states to collect data. I collect a lot of memories, impressions. And then it's all coming from the projection of Maya Ishvara that is held in my unconscious mind. And then what I do with it, I project my dream world. But actually, I'm using the projection of Maya Ishvara and retaining those impressions in my causal body as my body of vasanas that somehow projects the Maheshwara projection in another subject order reality called the, the Pratibhasika Satya. Okay? So we read, it goes so fast, huh? This is an hour and a half. How do we experience objects is going to be the topic of our next class. So, David, are you enjoying the Panchadasi? No?
I just I don't know, I couldn't get on mute. I'm enjoying it. It's just it just generates lots of thinking for me and processing and that kind of thing. So I just like literally have to walk away just kind of like trying to try and process. There's a lot here, and I think I really want to let it build. So
yeah, I mean, this class sometimes we touch some very profound concepts and notions, of the teachings, and it's good we hear again, and then take note, David, whatsoever needs to be further clarified, and then we do it in the next class.
I'm going back to reflecting back on past conversations we've had, and what does this mean, and kind of revisiting some of those again as well too. So there's just a lot going on here, and it's
I saw that you are processing a lot. That's why I know when
it feels very Rajasic to me. So and it kind of appeals to my Rajasic nature, but yeah, it's just very stimulating.
Yeah. There is. I mean, we are really, there is a lot of stimulation for this inquiry, to processing all this is sharpening. It sharpens our intellects, our discriminating power, even if sometimes it feels a little bit tiring, But it's good. I was doing a seminar recently during the 8 days of Carnival. I went there to a town in São Paulo. And I had an interesting experience because I hurt my back here and I went there. I did some treatments and I went and I was having acupuncture sessions every day to hold the body and to heal in that process, while doing my classes with them and with you guys as well. Yeah, it was intense. And I was working very hard because we were doing a very advanced text there as well. The 5 chapters of Panchadasi, which is actually, it's Brahmananda. It's another text that was attached to Panchadasi. And it was so intense. And I was going to do my Panchadasi, my acupuncture class session nearly every day. She used 1 hour sticking needles everywhere, and she put one here, and it was extremely painful. Okay. And then I asked, wow, what organ is this? And say, this is the mind, and I was so painful. And I said, oh, how interesting, because I'm working so hard to unfold this text, and it was very difficult for some reason. I will share with you guys why it was so difficult to go through those 5 chapters. But the bottom line is, when we work like this, it calls a lot of our intellectual, faculties to follow all this analysis of experience, suggested by the scriptures, and it's good. It sharpens our intellect, understand? Even if sometimes it feels a little bit tiring, but it's good stuff. Right, Ruth? Okie dokie. How are you doing, Gert? Good? Okay.
Yes, I'm good.
Okie dokie. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Swami Vidyaranya, and all our great Mahatmas and teachers in our Sampradaya. Thank you all, my friends. And we meet again next Thursday and next Monday, okay? Much love, big hug, kiss, and arrivederci. Ciao, ciao.
Arrivederci. Wow.
Ciao.
Thank you, Orlando.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Arlindo,
Thank you, Orlando.
Yes, Claudio?
if you want this week, if you have time, we can have a video together, Italian video, if you want.
Okay.
Okay?
Me and you,
Okay.
or with some of your friends?
No, me and you to make a video for YouTube in Italian.
Understood.
You-
Understood. I remember.
Okay.
the
Well,
concept,
we can also do another another try if you want to make,
Okay.
I don't know. You can tell me the day you are free so we can
Okay.
organize.
Okay. We'll get back to you about that. Okay. Thank you.
Okay?
Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao, ciao.
Ciao.